2:14 a.m. June 17th. The Strait of Hormuz. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Switchokafer has been staring at the same radar contact for 6 minutes and her heartbeat has been at 110 the entire time. The contact is the Iranian supertanker Kaveh, 280,000 tons of crude oil and political calculation pushing at 14 knots straight into the U.S. Navy's blockade line. The Kaveh belongs to Iran's state oil company. Its cargo represents $340 million in revenue that the Iranian regime has been trying to move for 3 weeks. Tonight, it has decided to stop waiting for a diplomatic window and drive through the front door. Behind it, 18 IRGC Sahand-class fast attack boats are breaking formation off the Iranian coast, spreading into a wide crescent pattern, accelerating, forming the geometry of a coordinated assault. On the SY-6 radar display inside the USS Jack H. The picture looks exactly like what it is, a trap being set in real time, in the narrowest choke point on the planet, with 25 million barrels of oil passing through this water every single day. Switch has been the tactical action officer aboard the Lucas for 11 months. She has run this watch rotation 44 times. She has never had a contact push the blockade line this hard. She is thinking about her father. Captain Emeka Okafor spent 26 years as a merchant marine master, crossing this strait 200 times. He told her when she got her commission. A blockade only exists as long as someone is willing to hold it. 14 months of sanctions enforcement and U.S. naval presence in this water rides on the next 46 minutes. 2 miles north, the Iranian Moudge-class frigate Sahand, a warship that Iran spent a decade upgrading with domestically built radar arrays and Noor anti-ship missile batteries, is moving into a fire support position off the tanker's port side. Its radar is already active. It is already painting the Lucas. Switch does not look away from the display. All stations, this is TAO. Set condition 1 throughout the ship, this is not a drill. You are looking at one American destroyer holding a line against 18 fast attack boats, a frigate, and 280,000 tons of crude oil coming straight at it. What is your next order? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know exactly what you'd do. Please note, this scenario is entirely hypothetical, built for military history education and entertainment. All weapons systems referenced are based on publicly available information. The Kaveh is not stopping. The IRGC boats are accelerating. And the USS Jack H. is the only ship standing between Iran and a $340 million oil delivery that breaks 14 months of enforcement. Drop a 1 inch in the comments to keep going, or a 2 inches if this is where you stop. 2:30 a.m. The first wave is drones. Along the Hormuzgan coastline, container launchers tucked behind limestone ridges open simultaneously. 40 Shahed 238 jet-powered drones, faster and quieter than their predecessors, flying at 280 knots at wave-top altitude, separate into 2 groups with disciplined spacing. The first group broadcasts electronic noise to draw radar attention and force SM-2 interceptor launches. The second group flies in complete electromagnetic silence, navigating on inertial guidance alone, carrying 50-kilogram warheads aimed at the Lucas's sensor masts. The Lucas's Aegis system identifies both groups instantly. It does not treat them equally. The loud group is assigned engagement priority based on immediate threat geometry. 2 SM-2 missiles launch and shred 4 drones at 6 miles. The silent group is handed to the Mark 38 Mod 2 gun system, which begins cycling through them at close range with 25 mm precision bursts. Carbon fiber and burning fuel hit the water in clusters. The blockade line holds, but Iran is not done, and Iran is not improvising. 2:43 a.m. The Sahand fires. 2 Noor anti-ship cruise missiles leave the frigate's launchers, drop to sea-skimming altitude, and accelerate toward the Lucas at 450 knots. The Noor is not a primitive weapon. It uses a combination of active radar homing and terrain-matching navigation to resist jamming, and it flies at 7 meters above the wave surface to complicate radar acquisition. SWIP Block 3 detects the Noor's seeker activation and floods the frequency band with a corrupted reflection, telling each missile it is targeting a contact 800 meters to the left. The first Noor detonates against open water. The second corrects its guidance. The SM-6 launched 14 seconds earlier finds it at 4 miles. 2 Noor missiles neutralized. IRGC commanders on the coastline decide to change the math. 2:56 a.m. A Shahed 238 drone, smaller than the previous wave and launched 40 minutes earlier from a civilian fishing vessel 3 miles east, has been flying a holding pattern at 50 feet, waiting for radar attention to shift to the Noor intercepts. When the SM-6 fireballs light up the sky, the drone descends to 20 feet and accelerates. The CIWS acquires it at 900 meters. The burst fires. The drone is already too close. The warhead detonates against the Lucas port superstructure. Not the hull, not the weapon systems, but the satellite communications array and the tactical data link antennas mounted on the mast above the bridge. The explosion is not catastrophic. 9 sailors in the forward compartments are thrown from their feet by the blast wave. 3 sustain serious injuries from striking equipment and bulkheads. The communications array is destroyed. The Lucas loses its link to the broader fleet network in 0.4 seconds. Switchokafer holds the edge of the fire control console while the ship shudders around her. She can feel the structural shock through her palms. The damage control alarm is screaming. Her Spy 6 display, still operational, still tracking, shows the Kava has shut down its AIS transponder and accelerated to 18 knots. The tanker is running for the gap.
Tadeo Engineering. We have fire on the port mast. Damage control teams are moving. SATCOM is gone. Link 16 is degraded.
Switch keys her own radio. Her voice is flat.
Engineering, Tadeo. Acknowledged. Keep me updated. We are not done.
The tanker is accelerating through the blockade gap, the ship's comms are destroyed, and 9 sailors are in medical right now. How does it feel to know that one tiny drone, smaller than a dining table, just nearly broke a $2 billion warship's connection to everything? Let that sit for a second. 3:17 a.m. 40 miles south, a U.S. Navy MQ-9B SeaGuardian maritime patrol drone has been orbiting in complete radio silence at 35,000 feet since 1 a.m. Its multispectral targeting system cuts through the smoke from burning drones and debris fires on the water, locks the thermal signature of the Cave's 4 diesel engines, and begins transmitting high-resolution position data on a redundant anti-jam Link 16 channel. 100 miles to the southwest, an E-2D Advanced Hawkeye receives that data, and immediately begins the work of rebuilding the fractured tactical picture. The Lucas is not connected to the fleet, but the Hawkeye can see the Lucas, see the Cave, see the Sahand, and see everything in between. It begins stitching the picture back together and pushing targeting solutions to assets that are already moving. Among those assets, 4 F-35C Lightning II stealth fighters from the carrier Air Wing, 140 miles south. The F-35Cs have been in Iranian radar range for 11 minutes. Iranian radar operators have been detecting the same thing for 11 minutes. A ghost signal that appears on the edge of resolution, refuses to resolve into a stable track, and then disappears. The F-35C's AN/APG-81 radar operates in modes that produce the minimum possible electromagnetic return, not invisible but never stable enough to achieve a fire control lock. The IRGC coastal operators know something is in the air. They cannot tell the Americans where it is. Each F-35C fuses data from the MQ-9B, the E-2D Hawkeye, and the Lucas's own Spy 6, building a single picture no individual platform can see alone. Tonight the F-35C is not firing. It is stitching a kill chain across a battle space where the flagship is partially blinded. 3:34 a.m. An F/A-18E Super Hornet from the carrier strike group, 160 miles south, releases an AGM-158C LRASM, the long-range anti-ship missile, on targeting coordinates provided by the F-35C kill chain. The F/A-18E never gets close to Iranian airspace. The LRASM drops from the wing rail, ignites its engine, and descends to 50 feet above the Gulf. It flies itself the rest of the way. The Sahand's radar operators detect the inbound contact at 22 miles. They begin electronic countermeasures, broadcasting jamming across the LRASM's expected guidance frequencies. The LRASM receives the jamming, classifies it as a threat signal, and uses it to verify it is looking at the right ship. The missile's autonomous targeting AI analyzes the Sahand's radar cross-section, identifies the primary radar array on the frigate's forward mast, and adjusts its terminal approach angle accordingly. The LRASM hits the Sahand's radar array directly, not the hull. Not a random surface impact, the array. The explosion is precise and devastating. The multi-million-dollar radar system that has been providing fire support and targeting data for the IRGC assault is shredded in under a second. The Sahand is alive. Its crew is shaken but intact. Its ability to provide radar fire control for the Cave's escape or the IRGC boat swarm is now zero. 2 MH-60R Cyhawk helicopters launch from the Lucas flight deck at 3:38 a.m. and begin hunting the surviving IRGC fast attack boats. The boats are fast, but Seahawks are faster, and the Hellfire missiles they carry do not require the boat to stop moving. The Seahawks work the outer edge of the formation from 3 miles, designating targets by fleck camera one at a time. In 14 minutes, 11 Sena-class boats are destroyed or disabled. The remaining 7 turn for the Iranian coastline. At 3:52 a.m., the Cava, now without its frigate radar protection, without its fast boat escort, surrounded by the acoustic and radar signatures of a fully restored U.S. kill chain, powers down its engines. The supertanker drifts to a stop in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz, 6 nautical miles short of open water. Switch Okafor looks at her display. The Cava is stationary. The Sahand is turning south. The drone contacts are gone. The Lucas is damaged. 9 sailors are in medical. The communications array is scrap metal, but the ship is holding position, and the blockade line is exactly where it was at 2:14 a.m. She keys the radio. All stations TAO. The line is held. Resume standard watch. She does not say anything else. She doesn't need to. Before you go, one thing about the AGM-158C LRASM that almost nobody talks about. Every previous anti-ship missile in the U.S. arsenal needed either a data link to a targeting platform or an active radar seeker pointed at the ship it was attacking. Both methods have a critical weakness. They can be jammed. Flood the right frequency and the missile goes dumb. The LRASM was built to solve that problem from the ground up. Once the LRASM is released from the aircraft, it does not wait for instructions. It uses its own AI-driven sensor suite to classify and identify the target ship independently of any external data link. Tonight, when the Sahand activated its jammers, the LRASM did not lose its target. It used the jamming signal, the frigate's own attempt to protect itself, to confirm the target's location and update its terminal approach geometry. The missile selected its own aim point, not the waterline, not a random surface impact, but the radar array, the component whose destruction was most operationally decisive. That decision was made by software, autonomously, in the final seconds of flight. No operator selected that aim point. The pilot who released the missile was 160 miles away and could not see the Sahand. The F-35C was not communicating with the LRASM in its terminal phase. The system made that call on its own. The Sahand activated its best jamming, and the LRASM used the jamming to find the exact component most worth hitting. America held the line tonight, not because it had more ships or more missiles. It held the line because every system in the kill chain, the F-35C's sensor fusion, the MQ-9B's thermal tracking, the E-2D's battle management, and the LRASM's autonomous aimpoint selection, was designed to fight through the exact conditions Iran created. Every Iranian electronic advantage tonight was already accounted for. That is what 14 months of preparation looks like when the blockade is finally tested. Here is what I want you to think about. The LRASM selected its own aim point, autonomously, in its final seconds, without a human in the loop. That decision saved the blockade tonight. But if a missile can choose what part of a ship to hit on its own, what is the next decision we are going to let it make? Drop your answer in the comments, because this is the question the next decade of warfare will answer, whether we're ready or not. And the question that never gets discussed after a victory. 9 sailors from the USS Jack H. Lucas are in medical right now because of one suicide drone smaller than a dining table. The blockade held. The tanker stopped. Iran's operation failed. But what does the cost of holding a line actually look like, and who talks about it when the cameras are pointing at the victory? Let us know below.